1,000 people in a room that identify as wrestling fans.
Yes.
1,000 people. Of that 1,000 people, 10% of them are going to be hardcore wrestling fans. So let's define what a hardcore wrestling fan is for the purpose of this conversation, because everybody will have a different opinion. My definition of a hardcore wrestling fan,
watch every week,
is somebody that's watching every week,
yes,
that's following it on social media, that's investing time, communicating with others, on Reddit or whatever the case may be, people that are just immersed in what's going on. 10% of that 1,000 people are going to be that fan.
Yeah.
90% of the people are going to be people that watch occasionally, once a month, twice a month. They'll check out the big pay-per-views. They'll get excited about WrestleMania. They'll maybe go to a house show, a WWE live event once, twice a year, maybe. I'd rather have 900 of those people to build my business on and appeal to than 100 of those people who are so invested in my shit. And you can't appeal to those 900 out of 1,000 people that are considered to be casual wrestling fans.
Well,
people that enjoy wrestling, they'll watch it when they're home. If there's not something else on television that's, maybe during the NFL on Monday Night Football, you're going to probably lose that audience, which WWE does typically every year. When NFL starts, WWE takes a hit. But their core audience is still significant enough because they've appealed to those 900 people and not to the 100 people.
Eric,
let me finish. And the creative that you embrace and you use as your strategy, if you're going to, if the design of your creative is to appeal to those 100 people, you're never going to get the 900.
Some big Bischoff on his 83 Weeks podcast that we're going to dive into here in just a little bit. This is GKW, Good Karma Wrestling. I am Gabe Neitzel along with Brian Rowitz from ESPN West Palm, and pleased to be joined by the WWE European Champion, Jonathan Hood, ESPN 1000 in Chicago. So we start there because, those comments from Bischoff, CM Punk fired back at him. It really caused a lot of debates online this week about his criticism of the storytelling in AEW. So I guess where we start, boys, how do you feel? Do you feel that this is a fair criticism coming from Eric Bischoff, who obviously has his own history and has been involved ever since AEW's been, he's been on AEW programming since they've been around. He's been on WWE programming since AEW's been around. How do you feel about this criticism? Fair or unfair from Eric Bischoff?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that come to mind. First, Eric Bischoff was part of WCW and also TNA and failed in both. There was some success, but ultimately was not be able to lead those companies to where they want to be as far as being a long-lasting, meaningful company. Everyone has ups and downs, but when Eric was in charge of WCW, at the end, it went down and it collapsed and it closed. With TNA, he also had an opportunity to do some creative, and it didn't work out well under Dixie Carter. So, but I will tell you this, guys.
Did he ever start when he was, because when they did the whole brand split, didn't they hire Bischoff to be like the SmackDown creative director, and then he actually never started that job?
Yeah, and that's why his podcast is called 83 Weeks. He was in the job for actually 83 weeks. Or actually, in this case, actually, his podcast is called 83 Weeks because that's when Nitro was beating the WWE Raw. He actually was in the job in the WWE for, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks before he was let go.
It wasn't long at all.
Yeah, that's actually the way it is. But here's where I think he's right. And I've got a lot of issues with Eric over the years, but here's where I think he's right. I think after our show last week, I was thinking about it, guys, and here's what I was thinking about. Clearly AEW wants to be an alternative to the WWE. They want to be WWE light, which has been the problem with a lot of companies over the years. You can say that about TNA and other companies. They want to be just like WWE, and that didn't work. I like the AEW's trying to be themselves, but I think that as a show, we can't keep beating our heads against the wall saying, hey, wait, the masses don't know what ROH is. Hey, the masses don't know what New Japan is. But clearly, AEW, guys, is trying to be able to take care of the hardcore wrestling fan, not the WWE fan. And if that's how you want to do business initially, that's fine. But Eric is right, Gabe and Brian, that you actually want to be able to cater to everybody, bringing everybody into the tent, more so than just the average wrestling fan that knows everything, all the smart fans. I think that you actually should try to expand it as much as possible. And I don't know if that's a long-term plan, but for right now, it's about guys like you and I that know about Ring of Honor and New Japan being part of the AEW umbrella.
Well, yeah, so I agree with what you're saying from that standpoint. What I don't agree with Bischoff is I don't get how ripping the storylines is a thing. Like, storylines is what AEW has been built on. We've talked about it, the whole MJF, Punk, Wardlow, that storytelling is some of the best we've seen in wrestling. And if he's going to compare them to WWE, who's drawing close to $2 million every week, the one thing we rip them for the most is their lack of storytelling. Like, their storytelling right now is Roman Reigns good. He beats a lot of people. And then there's not much else. So it's hard to put those two together. But I do think there is something to the fact of AEW maybe being a little too inside. But 900,000 people every week is still impressive for a company.
I think what you have to, the one thing you have to remember through this entire thing is AEW is still so new to this. Like, that's the thing for me here. And I think you have to cater early to the fans they're currently catering to. And you still have to build up trust in that base. So I think you're still going to look at this and look, I think it's very clear that AEW wants to expand that. That's how we get a pretty terrible debut from Satnam Singh, right? Because they want to expand and appeal into the India market, which is something the WWE has done as well. So I think they want to try to expand it, but you don't want to expand too big. You don't want to go too big, too fast, too quick. That's how you fall flat on your face. And to be fair, not every AEW story is perfect. Like, I'm finally glad one of the best things AEW has going for it is the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club. Like, it's such a fun, but after they formed and after they got Wheeler Yuta into the group, they kind of just were aimless. It was cool to see them show up and kick ass every week, but now it seems like they're going to be involved in the feud with the Jericho Appreciation Society, as we saw last night. So now that makes me excited. Okay, now they're going to have an angle. They're going to have a direction. It was kind of the same thing with CM Punk early on, where he was knocking off these dream matches. Like, there wasn't really much build-up with Darby Allin other than both of them wanted the match at All Out in Chicago, so we got it. And he was wrestling every week, but then he got some stuff he could sink his teeth into. Eddie Kingston got to sink his teeth in with MJF. And it seems like AEW just kind of eases these guys in and then eventually builds a storyline with them. And the biggest issue I guess I have with this, though, from Eric, to your point, Brian, what's the best storyline the WWE's had in the last 6 months? Brock and Roman?
Roman Reigns. It's Brock and Roman. That's the only storyline of me that's really meaningful.
Yeah, Kevin Owens is entertaining, but I don't know if his calling out of Stone Cold Steve Austin leading up to WrestleMania probably dragged on for maybe a little too long. But right now his feud, well, I find him entertaining because he's Kevin Owens and he's like, to me, can get just about anything that WWE creative gives him and get it over. And by the way, Kevin Owens, I think, was probably my favorite feud of this Roman Reigns championship reign. Like, that feud was fantastic. But the whole thing he's doing with Ezekiel, Elias, is he like, that's not quality storytelling. Now, it's funny. It's comic relief that you get over the course of 3 hours. But WWE right now is wandering aimlessly with no real stories to tell, as we saw with just one championship defended this past weekend at WrestleMania Backlash. Now, they had some fun matches, but that's kind of the AEW format, isn't it? Where you have some fun matches, but AEW has also found a way to keep their championships kind of relevant, especially once they hit the pay-per-views. And that's the one thing WWE is really struggling with now. What do they do with Roman Reigns? And I know we're going to get into Roman in just a little bit, but I think the storytelling in WWE needs to be buttoned up as well. Now they've got, 40 years, 50 years of a fan base to fall back on. So they've got that cushion where AEW doesn't have that and they need to build it.
So I know people that are listening to this podcast are wondering, so why are these guys hammering the story so much on the show? Well, the WWE or AEW or New Japan or whatever wrestling show is no different than The Sopranos or The Wire or Breaking Bad or whatever. We are locked in this male soap opera because of the storylines, right? Anybody can have matches, right?
One of my favorite things to do, Jay Hood, is when somebody goes, "Why do you watch wrestling? You know it's fake, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know what else is fake? Game of Thrones, and yet you were on your couch watching dragons every week. All right, like let's just calm down here for a second."
And usually naked. Usually, that's what usually that's where you can find a
Wait,
Game
the
of Thrones
dragons
fan.
or the people watching?
Yes. So I mean, so that's the reason why we watch, guys, is because it's about the story, right, Brian? I mean, that's what it's about. And so AEW, hey, we've seen a lot of dream matches. We've seen a lot of matches, right? So I just don't want AEW to get into where NXT was. As good as NXT was, they were light on story. And so that's an issue. Like we see Tony Khan talk about, oh, this is gonna be a dream match. It's a dream match. Okay, great. But where's the story? At some point, you'll run out of matches and don't have enough story to be able to connect it. Stories connect matches. Matches make moments, and then you are able to tell a great story at the crescendo of a cage match, whatever the blow-off is, right? But wrestling is not meant to have great 5-star matches for just a regular Wednesday night, and then maybe one on Friday, and then have another one Wednesday. And then, because after a while, those will burn out. Storylines, stretched out storylines to build to something is what wrestling fans, I think, in the majority of them want.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But I think in terms of AEW, I think, we're all on the same page. We want that long-term success. We want them to be an alternative, mainly because I think it pushes WWE. Like the closer they get to that 1.7 mil, the more WWE feels that pressure, the more they tighten things up. But that can go for another few more years. Like the thing I looked at, being the elite, which basically built AEW, that was the one thing that took everyone behind the curtain, that got that rabid fan base. That is that, that small core, that inner core that Bischoff talked about. They only have 520,000 subscribers on YouTube. They've only got 4 episodes that have ever topped 1 million. So AEW's already grown that fan base because they're doing 900,000 every week. AEW is putting together good pay-per-view numbers. AEW is selling out shows like Forbidden Door without even announcing a match. So I think the way Bischoff, framed it, it sort of made everyone feel like the sky is falling. But if you're AEW, if you're Tony Khan, you're happy right now. Like there's really nothing wrong with AEW. Yes, it might be a few years down the road, but I think overall, like they're winning in life right now.
What is your, since AEW's inception, what's your guys' favorite? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't prepare for this, but your favorite AEW storyline since the company's inception?
My favorite AEW storyline. Gosh, why do I keep thinking about CM Punk? I keep thinking about him. Yeah,
I mean, Punk and MJF. Cody and
Punk
Dustin.
And yeah,
like that wasn't. I don't even know if they're on TV yet, but Cody and Dustin was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they didn't have TV, but that was they built that up through being the elite, and then that was on their first actual pay-per-view.
Right.
Since All In wasn't technically an AEW thing. Double or Nothing the following year was their first pay-per-view before they started TV in October. I mean, I've really enjoyed the Mox and Kenny Omega feud that they've gone back to a couple of times, but my favorite one is probably Hangman and Kenny. Like from being a tag team to splitting up, and then the long chase that Hangman had. So it's obvious to me that they can tell stories. It's just figuring out how you can get more of that mainstream appeal. But again, that takes time. And WWE right now, WWE doesn't really have that. Where you have some people that have that appeal that we've talked about. Where with way back when The Rock, but Sasha Banks, making appearances in The Mandalorian. AEW hasn't established themselves, and the other part is being in WWE, they've opened doors to different people, whether it's The Miz doing WWE studio movies or Triple H doing WWE studio. Like they opened that door for acting for other people to pursue that I think kind of brings in more of that casual fan as well. Where AEW, the people that are in AEW right now, they're not that. The Jericho Appreciation Society uses the word sports entertainer, and they automatically become heels in AEW because the people that are there are Bryan Danielson because he wants to be there as a professional wrestler, Jon Moxley because he wants to be a wrestler, Kenny Omega because he wants to wrestle. So, maybe if they eventually grow that, but I think that while they do have that passionate fan base, it's a good fan base to build off of.
Yes, well, that's the thing. You mentioned WWE and the advantage they have. That head start, I think, and Punk said back in November, the casual fan, it doesn't exist, which I don't know if I completely agree with. But from a WWE standpoint, that 30-year head start, if you grew up watching Hogan and Savage and then you stopped watching, when you're flipping through the channels and there's nothing on, you've heard of Monday Night Raw. So you're going to stop and watch it. If they're coming to town, you're like, oh, WWE, that's pretty fun. AEW comes to town, there's a chance you don't know what that is. So they have that advantage. And I think the PG thing also plays into their favor, because for me, as a father of a 6-year-old, I don't have him watch a ton of wrestling, mainly because I don't want him body slamming kids in kindergarten. But if I'm going to let him watch, it's going to be more WWE stuff than it is AEW. And I personally love the AEW stuff, but like that edge, I don't know if I'm ready to introduce him to yet. Whereas WWE, you bring him out there and, Roman puts the number 1 in the air, and that's the edgiest they're going to get.
All right,
I understand that.
You keeping track of this? Intergender wrestling, good. Kindergarten wrestling, bad. All right.
Got it?
Exactly. And by the way, if you want your kid to learn about, body slamming a kid in kindergarten, the WWE style is much better.
Right, exactly. You're safer, yeah.
You don't want the AEW style where you're falling off a freaking ladder onto chairs.
Yes.
You
I don't want that Darby spot in kindergarten, off the desk to the chair. That doesn't work.
Right.
So, that's why we avoid that.
Right, exactly right. You want the softer, as Bryan Danielson said, the softer WWE style in kindergarten. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's why I think they have that advantage in their favor as well.
So to put a bow on it, when we say is AEW 2 inside, okay, well that's by design. Yes, it has that ECW feel of saying stuff that you're not supposed to say. But here's the thing: is Bischoff is trying to say, are you talking to the majority or just a small minority of diehard wrestling fans? See, the thing I don't know about this is I don't know, Gabe, what percentage of wrestling fans are inside and smart. 50%, 70%.
I mean, with the internet, I would think would drive that up just slightly above 50%. But there's still plenty of people that aren't checking out dirt sheets or trying to figure out what the latest rumors are, and they just want to watch on Monday or Wednesday or Friday, whatever night they happen to be watching. Or if they're the casual fan that might check out a pay-per-view and has, I've got Peacock. I used to like wrestling. Let's go ahead and check out.
You know what?
This WWE pay-per-view.
I think I done something, and I think, and I can relate this to all the sports that we talk about on a daily basis. But in some ways, to me, it's kind of like that guy, Emily, that says, "Oh, my favorite baseball team's in town. Let's go. Let's load up the truck and let's just go to the baseball game." Right? Fan 9 to 5 turns on their favorite sports radio station and says, "Hey, did my team win today? What's going on?" Okay, well, I gotta get to the office. I don't know about all that, right? I think because I have like in Denver. There are a lapsed fan that hasn't watched since Cena was on top. He's like, "Why are you going off?" I heard they're in town. We're just going to go check them out. I mean, that's what it is, right? They become Rockettes. They become like the Harlem Globetrotters. You're not going to on top. You're just going because you just happen to know that the WWE's in town. With AEW, I think it's more the hardcore, like, be on top. And I know it's going to be blood. I know it's going to be violence. They're going to shoot. And I got to go see that.
And I think, honestly, what I think is it's AEW fans growing it. So I think of just me and my experiences in my life. And I stopped watching wrestling for a bit in college. I was just way too busy. I couldn't keep up with everything. And then I got out and I started watching more WWE and got back into it. And like my friends are like, "Why do you go?" I'm like, "All right, I'll tell you what. Our station actually had some free tickets for a WWE pay-per-view. It was Fastlane. It was Fastlane when Goldberg was still around, and at that pay-per-view, or at the Fastlane pay-per-view before Mania, Goldberg won the title in Milwaukee. And I brought a bunch of my friends. Like, I think I had like 8 tickets, so I brought like 7 people. And they just had so much fun watching the wrestling. And now some of those people, I've had them over for AEW pay-per-views or a Dynamite, and they absolutely just, when you don't invest yourself into the storylines week in and week out, the AEW, well, we just talked about it, the AEW style is certainly more dangerous, but it's also more entertaining. And they have had so much fun watching that fast pace of AEW. And I think it's going to be AEW fans bringing their casual buddies. Hey, we've been to a couple wrestling shows. Hey, you got to check out. Dynamite's going to be in town Wednesday night. Let's just go check it out. And it's AEW fans bringing their friends with them.
Well, remember, that was the whole message from the jump. Like Tony talked about getting that lapsed fan that stopped watching wrestling. But how do you pull them back is the key right now. And, maybe we'll see once the NBA and NHL postseason ends, maybe there are enough people that see those promos like, oh, maybe I'll give that a shot. I don't watch wrestling anymore. Maybe I want to watch that. Maybe the numbers get a little bump because they've gotten a little bit of a bump since NXT left Wednesdays. And I do think NXT initially being on Wednesdays might have hurt them a little bit because you didn't get that original jump from, the start. But maybe there's something once the postseason ends that they get a little bump off of that, because how do you take that next step without going off the thing? Because I think the minute they aren't too inside, you might lose some of this core also, and there's no guarantee of getting that casual fan.
All right, let's go ahead. We've talked about AEW. We move on. One of the things we like to do here on GKW, we have our 3 count. The other 3 stories that are going on that need to be talked about in the world of wrestling. Brian, what do we have as number 1 on the 3 count?
All right, guys, this past Sunday, WrestleMania Backlash took place. What was your biggest takeaway from the night?
In terms of storyline, I think my biggest takeaway was, and the thing I'm probably most excited for going forward, was Rhea Ripley joining not Judgment Day, the Judgment Day. They went the opposite way of Facebook. Facebook dropped the, and they picked up the over on for Judgment Day. I like this little stable that Edge is building. It has some intrigue for me. And after Raw, it appears that we're still going to be getting, I don't know, is there a backlash to Backlash where we're going to, because it looks like Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes aren't quite done yet. But I'm excited for Rhea Ripley because I think this is going to be the best for her character. I think this is where she had some success in NXT. And when she initially came up to the main roster and was fighting in the Thunderdome era against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania for the NXT title, that was, I think, the best version of Rhea Ripley. And this is going to get her back to that. So that's my biggest takeaway, the thing I am most excited about coming out of Judgment Day. The Judgment Day out of the biggest Backlash. Too many WWE pay-per-view names just floating in my brain.
Well, it's just dumb. It shouldn't be WrestleMania Backlash, and it shouldn't be the Judgment Day. You use the pay-per-view name to build a faction. Why don't you just call Great Balls of Fire? Because that worked. That got over, right? Great Balls of Fire. Because that definitely worked. Vince McMahon, I got an idea. Great Balls of Fire, goddammit. I'm like, really? That's what you come up with? Great job, Vince. They let him have that one, and then they wheeled him back to his crypt. My biggest takeaway is that last week we looked at WrestleMania Backlash, and we didn't understand. We were dismayed by not having enough title matches. Where's the Intercontinental title in that spot? Where is the U.S. title? Where are the title matches, right? But the one thing for sure at the WWE, say what you want, you put those matches in the ring, and more times than not, they're going to deliver. That was my takeaway. We can bitch about these cards and the storytelling and the storylines, but for the most part, move Omos and Lashley to the side. You knew what that was, right? That's nonsense. Move Madcap Moss and and Happy Corbin to the side. You knew what that was. Move that to the side. But for the most part, guys, it delivered. It's exactly what you wanted. Those men and women worked hard. No, it didn't make sense for the world champion not to defend the title. No, it didn't make sense for one of the singles champions to be able to show their worth. But you know what, though? It delivered. And Ronda Rousey had her second best match, I would say, since she's been in the company against Charlotte. That was her the first one was her debut. I've never seen a debut that good. When she was with Triple H, that whole thing. That was her second best match. Her first, I think her best singles match was against Charlotte. Those are my takeaways for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you expected. It was a house show. It was good matches. It was what it was. I agree with Gabe. Rhea's the only thing storyline-wise, but there was nothing else storyline-wise. You're like, okay, I want to watch Monday. And then, to Gabe's point, we're going to get Cody and Rollins again. We're still getting Finn and Priest. We're going down the same path. I don't know what that point is. It was a glorified house show.
What's wrong with Cody and Seth? You liked that match, didn't you?
No, the match was good.
But it's 2-0. So, what's the point? Why should Cody face him again?
I don't know if I need a third one.
What is the story between those two?
Cody took Seth's moment, and Cody there.
It made sense. I think they made sense building to it where, Seth was like, hey, I want to go up against you again because I didn't get to prepare for you. You got to prepare for me. So now let me prepare and I'll show you. And then he got to prepare and still lost. So I don't need a third one. I don't know how they're going to be able to kind of put together a comprehensive storyline. Maybe they end up being inside Hell in a Cell. They get to be the Hell in a Cell match, especially with no Roman Reigns on June 5th in Chicago. But Yeah, I mean, the match was really good. The match was fun.
Yeah.
I loved the match. I don't know if I need it again.
Exactly. Like, and that's the thing. Like, when we talk about WWE storytelling, like, what from this card like has really storytelling? I guess the Edge and AJ stuff, but like, if that's not going away and we get a third one there also, like, who cares? Like, it feels like it's shaping up to be Edge and Priest versus AJ and Finn, and that might be in a cell. But like, we've seen this stuff. We see them every single week. We see these rematches. So storyline wise, like, it was a glorified house show on Sunday.
It was. We should have known, right? WrestleMania Backlash in a sea town like Providence, Rhode Island. That's what it is. It's a sea town. You guys laugh. I have the list.
My favorite thing.
Oh, you have a whole list? Wow.
I have the list right.
My new favorite thing on GKW is Jay Hood just taking out towns. He's taking out Milwaukee. He's taking out Providence. Can't wait till we get to the D towns. I'm really curious what the F towns are.
Listen. Those are not my list. That's a wrestling list. That's a wrestling.
Okay.
All right. So you give me a city. I'll tell you what type of town it is. Chicago clearly is an A-town. We get Forbidden Door. We get Hell in the Cell. We get all the big. So clearly we're in A-town. Clearly, ask Tony Khan. Ask Vince. All right. So give me a city. I'll tell you what town it is. Tell me, just any city.
What about Miami down here in Florida?
That's an A-town.
Oh, okay. Huh.
That's an A-town because that's an old Florida Championship Wrestling territory, Eddie Graham territory. So that's an A-town.
Wow! Congrats.
Give me another one.
San Francisco.
A-town. That's Bay Area, West Coast, San Francisco, Oakland, A-town.
Then how come AEW is how come they haven't really been out on the West Coast that much? I mean, they get to Vegas obviously every year, and yes, June 1st they're going to be doing Los Angeles for the first time, but they haven't hit anywhere out there.
No.
You know why? Because they've had enough shows with shitty times out west. That's why. What time was Rampage? 2:30 Pacific.
I think we had another one this week. Get excited! I think it's another special start time.
That's why. Thank God for social media. I forgot what time Rampage. It was 4:30 Central. I'm like, oh, there's Rampage. That's right. Let me turn this on. Like that's why. Like because the time you give me a city, I'll tell you what time. But it's not me, Gabe. I know you think I'm taking shots. It's not me. Oh no, it's not me.
You would never.
No. I would never do that. Milwaukee, B-town. But I it's like West Palm, C-town.
Yeah.
It's on the way.
Good that one, yeah.
It is. It's a C-town. I understand. Like it's on the way, right? It's a house show. Half the card. You don't even get you don't even get the main. You don't even get a champion in there. We get
NXT. We've gotten Ring of Honor before. That's the extent of it.
That's it. That's all you get. That's all. Oshkosh, C-town.
Oh wow, I'm surprised Oshkosh is even a C-town.
Yeah, C-town. Sure, absolutely. It's not my list. It's wrestling's list. It's not mine.
Good to know.
So you were saying about Backlash?
Yeah. So Backlash. I mean, talk about a C pay-per-view. But the thing about house shows, though, to call it a glorified house show, like house shows are fun. I enjoy going to house shows because I don't get the commercial breaks. Like going to a WWE live event, you got promo segment, match, promo segment, commercial, promo segment. Like it's just straight wrestling. That's what I love about house shows is you get a lot of fun matchups, and that's what this was. As Jay Hood mentioned, you kind of throw two of those aside, but to have 4 of the 6 matches really step up and deliver and be as fun as they were, so it was a fun night to watch wrestling. I don't know how much it pushed things forward because, well, I think this kind of ties into something else we're going to talk about in the 3 count. The world revolves around Roman Reigns, and maybe Roman Reigns isn't going to be there to be revolved around as much as maybe he should be as the unified champion in WWE, Brian.
What a great transition. Number 2, Dave Meltzer reporting that Reigns will reportedly be taking 10 weeks off over the next couple of months. So, guys, should he drop the title before he leaves?
I mean, I don't know if these are going to be 10 consecutive weeks. I mean, I've seen the Meltzer stuff. I've seen where the new contract, because this all started I don't know if it was over the weekend or a couple weekends ago where Roman Reigns got on a mic on a house show and said, hey, I'm going to be entering a new phase in my career. Don't know, if I'll be here. You guys have been great. And this was all, of course, captured and then placed on social media. So that got everybody speculating. Oh, is he going to be joining his cousin, Dwayne Johnson? Is he going to be out there in Hollywood with The Rock making movies? What's he going to be doing? What's this next step? Well, apparently this next step is a contract that calls for less dates and is more of a Brock Lesnar type of schedule. And WWE's done it plenty of times where Brock has had the belt, disappears for a while. But the problem is he's the champ on both shows. Like, they've painted themselves into this terrible corner where if he just disappears, I mean, he's not going to be, we know because we've seen the poster now, the redesigned poster for Hell in a Cell in Chicago, June 5th. He ain't going to be at Hell in a Cell. So the championship isn't going to be defended there. Then they've got like 3 consecutive stadium shows between SummerSlam and Money in the Bank and a big house show, not a house show, but a big show overseas. So he'll be at those because he needs to be. Those are their big ones, and they need Roman to sell tickets for those. But to be the double champ and to disappear for a long period of time, that to me seems very troublesome because I feel like one show you can kind of get by with it, but I don't think you can do it for both shows.
And also, before you answer it, just to Gabe's point about pain in the corner, pay-per-view schedule, June 5th, Hell in a Cell, July 2nd, Money in the Bank, July 30th is SummerSlam, and then there's nothing in August. So if those 10 weeks are coming now, that's 3 pay-per-views with 2 of them sort of being marquee ones over the next couple months.
And just as an aside, guys, with Money in the Bank, I understand that there's new rules to this. If you get into Money in the Bank, you can't cash it in until WrestleMania. Did you hear about this?
Until?
So
until WrestleMania.
I saw the promo where Cody said that, but I guess it hasn't really been like explained outside of the promo.
Right, unless he got that wrong. But then why would you air that? Right. He said he said it was played twice. Like it was like, yeah, if I get Money in the Bank, I'll cash it in. I can only cash it at WrestleMania, which has never been the case. The thing with Money in the Bank is that you want to cash it anytime. Raw, SmackDown, that's the fun of it, right? You had the briefcase you're carrying around. It's almost like a rib on the wrestler carrying a briefcase around all over the country that says Money in the Bank on it. But I mean, but I understand that's what Cody said. Who knows if they change their mind? But that's what was said.
If it becomes a Royal Rumble type of prize where you get to be in one of the main events of WrestleMania, that kind of ruins the Rumble, doesn't it? Because if somebody from SmackDown wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, well, now I know someone from Raw is probably going to end up winning the Royal Rumble, and that kind of cuts the possibilities of who's going to win that in half.
You know, Cody has his own way of saying stuff that's not right. So maybe he's a little rusty. I mean, he's still calling stuff the belt and squared circle and using those, wrestling terms that WWE doesn't use. Who knows? Maybe you might be screwed up on that. But
maybe it's part of his character, though. Like, he wants Mania to be his moment, and like the promo was him cutting it. I don't know.
But to answer the question about Roman Reigns, yes, Brian, he should. The time-honored tradition is, like, if you're going away for 10 weeks, you should drop the title. But this is the theme of the show, storyline, right? You put 2 championships on Roman Reigns, and he's just going to walk away.
Right.
See, I wouldn't mind it if I knew what the top 10 was, right? Say Roman's away. What's the number 1 draw without him? Randy Orton, RK Bro, like the Usos. Like, see, that's the problem with this company. We said it a few weeks ago on the show. So if Roman beats Brock, then what's next? And they still haven't answered that yet. And
because
now
I don't
Roman's
think they know. I don't think they think through that stuff. So like we talked about last week with the tag titles. We're like, oh, let's unify the tag titles. It's a great build up. And they're like, wait, we shouldn't build those up. Like, we shouldn't unify them. Then we lose the tag champs. Like, all right, 6-man. Like, I don't know how far in advance they think, which is the issue right now.
Well, that's because
that's what got WCW closed, when you don't know week to week what you're doing.
Well, but that's because, and I feel like they've said this publicly, they're in the business of making moments. And the moment, it was a great moment for Roman to win both titles at WrestleMania, but now you got to plan the next moment. That kind of becomes the issue. You got to figure out what's next. And if him being off for a bunch of weeks is what's next, like, I feel like SmackDown has been a repeat for the last 6 weeks. And it's not going to be getting any better if you don't have the main attraction from that show. I mean, SmackDown's already losing Charlotte Flair. I'm assuming Charlotte Flair is going to be gone. I mean, I guess storyline-wise, that's another thing that came out of Backlash was her breaking her arm with the chair and the arm lock that Ronda Rousey put on her. So that, to me, Charlotte Flair is going to be taking some time off, which is fine. But now you're arguably two of your three biggest stars on SmackDown aren't going to be there. And oh, by the way, one of them's taking the championship with him. Like that, I just don't know what to do with SmackDown right now.
And is Ronda considered full-time? Do we know that she's going to be there every week?
I assume so. She has been since her return. So I'm assuming
she's been doing the house shows.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, but like from the SmackDown standpoint, like we talked about it after it happened, like Nakamura, like we were sort of excited about that. And then Super Kicks laid him out for a month. And they're like, hey, by the way, like we didn't forget. And now he's with Sammy. Like, so like they sort of went back to that. But like, even if you have him drop just one, like it needs to be a special moment when he drops that title. It's been what? Over 600 days he's been the champion. Have him drop one of them, because otherwise, why are you watching these pay-per-views unless they're banking on the fact that Money in the Bank is in a main event in July, and then SummerSlam, hopefully you dust him off for it.
I would not have a problem with this if I knew that the Intercontinental Championship or the U.S. Championship was defended, and that's your number one contender, and you're building up baby faces or heels. You're building up a roster of contenders to take on Roman for either championship. But you're not doing that, though. Everyone is kind of like at the same plane. Everyone's at the same plane. You didn't do anything in WrestleMania for the U.S. or the Intercontinental Championship, so now they're just wrestlers. It's Roman and everybody else. That's what it is.
Well,
yeah,
and
I mean,
finally,
you see it.
Yeah.
We
you
finally
see with
get a
Theory,
championship.
like they're building him up, and like there's something there, but like we've seen this story before. They are building him up to get to WrestleMania to get squashed by some guy we haven't seen in 10 years. Like there's going to be some legend that comes and squashes Theory. That is what he's being built up to. Like I have no confidence that they're building him up to potentially main event Mania.
Well, they used Theory this week, Theory in the U.S. Championship on Monday Night Raw, to go back to Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins.
Right.
Like that didn't do anything for the U.S. title.
Nothing.
Just built it up to kind of go and swerve into a different direction. Like that's the problem. Like if I felt comfortable of, like Jay Hood said, I think you can get away with him being gone and probably having both belts and being gone if you're able to rely on storytelling and build it up. But that's the problem. Nobody trusts, like, I don't trust WWE storytelling to be able to operate without the championships. And that's the other thing. Like, I am suspending my belief and diving in. Like we said, like this is just a TV show, like The Sopranos, The Wire, Game of Thrones, all those other things.
Yeah.
And the belief here is that these people have chosen a life of fighting, and ultimately, and every other promotion, whether we're talking about UFC, Bellator, boxing, like the top of that is winning championships in your weight class or winning the overall championship. And if you are a company that is building on fighting and you don't have championships to fight for, then what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect example. Like when you think of boxing, like, yes, Mike Tyson as heavyweight champion, like that's the pinnacle. But like in boxing, we see other belts get the shine also. Like Floyd is going to main event as, a middleweight, a lightweight, whatever he is. If we had confidence that the U.S. title, the IC title could main event, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't tell you right now who the IC champ is. Like I can't remember. Like Theory, I remember because of because of Monday is the U.S. champ. But who's the IC champ right now?
It's the guy from Kentucky, the brother from Kentucky. What's his name? Ricochet.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's Ricochet.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So what was the last time we saw him do anything? Congrats to him, I guess. Like so. Like we're not
that's
good
analysis.
It's a show.
Hey, Nigel, that's good analysis. The brother from Kentucky. What's his name? That's solid analysis.
Oh, I think we found our promo for the week. Who's the IC champ? The brother from Kentucky. Oh, okay. Made it very clear.
I can't remember. But that's sad, though.
It's super sad. Well, it's super sad because Ricochet's really damn good.
Yeah,
like, I really like watching Ricochet, and I can't remember that he's the Intercontinental Champion because he hasn't been featured on SmackDown for 7 weeks. My goodness.
So that is my point. Like, we won't see Ricochet main eventing SummerSlam because they don't have a world champion. Like, that's disappointing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the tradition is if you're going to go away, drop the championship, and they're not going to do that because they boxed themselves in the corner, as you guys said, with Brock Lesnar. The next obvious guy would be Drew McIntyre because Reigns and McIntyre have been doing the loop. They've been all over the house shows. What's wrong with McIntyre finally being a champion in front of fans, actually for the first time?
But
right?
don't you have to save that for Europe and that moment? Like, if we're going to talk about moments, you let him win it wherever they are in Europe in that stadium show.
Yeah. Drew needs an opponent to get that done.
Right.
Roman is around, so like Roman's got to be around for that.
I mean, honestly, the only person that makes sense to win the title is Brock, and that's sad. That doesn't do anything for me, but that's the only thing that sort of makes sense.
So, oh man, yeah, because I can't even. I mean, as much as I want to say you could make it make sense for Cody, maybe. But, like, that just seems too quick, right? Like, that's a long-term story you want to tell of his pursuit. You made that very clear with his first promo on Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania. But it just seems way too soon. Yeah, Drew's the only one.
The only thing they have going for him is Hell in a Cell, to Jay Hood's point, is in an A-town and is in Chicago. So, you can justify a moment there.
I know before you guys text me or ask me, no, I'm not going to Hell in a Cell.
What?
No, I'm not going. Even though it's in my own backyard. No, because you guys saw the poster. Cody is funny. Cody's front facing on the poster. Like, oh, the AEW guy is front facing the poster without Roman. Like, okay, then I'm not going. like, hey, what's the draw?
Cody versus Rollins to see who wins meaningless match.
Another cage match with no blood in the WWE. Great.
Let's play this out. If Rollins wins, I mean, Hell in a Cell is as blow off as it gets, right? Like in this, like that is the biggest blow off match that WWE can do. If Seth wins, that's the equivalent to somebody winning twice in the regular season, then losing to that same team in the playoffs in the NFL, right?
Yes.
I mean, so yeah, hey, congrats on your regular season wins. You lost when it really mattered.
And then you cut the legs out from Cody. And then if Cody goes 3-0, then Rollins is his legs are cut out. So, like, again, booking themselves in a corner, someone's got no momentum behind them after that match.
That's right.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys.
Yeah, I mean, for AEW storytelling, I like how they avoid rematches as much as they have. Now, that's to say that they don't do them, because they certainly have, but I think they avoid them better than WWE has, where we end up, again, I mean, in the heyday of this, we saw Cena versus Orton for 5 straight pay-per-views. So what else do we have this week on the 3 count, Brian?
All right, guys. In AEW, the Owen Hart Memorial Tournament got started last night on Dynamite. Next Wednesday, we will see both Jokers taking on Samoa Joe on the men's side, Britt Baker on the women's side. So, guys, who do you want to see as the Jokers in the Owen Hart Tournament?
First of all, big shout out to the main event of AEW last night. It's not my favorite match of the week, which we'll get into in here a little bit, because I don't think it was like a match. Like, it was just stunt after stunt with Darby Allin versus Jeff Hardy. Like, how old is Jeff? Jeff's like, what, 43, 44, 45 years old now? Like, why is he doing these things still? Like, why is he? I mean, you can do some of them, sure. Did he need to do all of them? Probably not. Was it wildly entertaining? I appreciate it. But I also want to see, your body not completely crumpled up Jeff Hardy, who ended up getting the win last night. But it was a wild start to the Owen Hart tournament on the men's side. So big shout out for that. For the women, I don't know who it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be anybody big, because I don't think it can be, because I highly doubt that one of the main stars that they have in Britt Baker, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, I just don't see her losing in the opening round of this tournament, right? Like, so I don't see like a big surprise Joker and then beating her, because ultimately what I think we're building towards is her versus Ruby Soho in the final at the pay-per-view, right, for Double or Nothing. I think that's what we're building towards. So for the women's side, I mean, is it, do we see Riho out there? Do you throw Ty Conti out there? Like, I don't know who you put out there, because to me, you're just feeding them to Dr. Britt Baker, DMD.
So what if it's someone on a current roster in a company? What about Hardcore Country?
I mean,
What about Mrs. Aldis?
So are these companies going to continue to? We talked about this with Impact and having W. Morrissey show up.
Yeah.
Companies are just going to be completely cool with sending some of their stars over just to be fed to. Now, I think they got, as short of a match as it was, I think they got some offense in for Morrissey, so it wasn't a complete waste of time against Wardlow. But are these companies just completely cool with getting the bump and rub whatever they can off of the AEW audience by sending their person over there to lose?
Well, she was at the Royal Rumble, right?
Yeah.
Didn't she wrestle the Royal Rumble? Okay, so if you're looking for name recognition, that's what I came up with. But realistically, it could be Athena. Like, I don't know if that's what I don't know if you want that. I mean, like, as a surprise. I guess if you want a wild card or a wrestler to come in that's going to lose, you can give it to Athena. Right? It could be someone like that that's a free agent that's available. But I'm thinking that they want star power or someone that used to be in the WWE. Can I give you Tennille Dashwood? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it has to deliver. Like, I don't think she does it. Like, it has to be something like, oh, it's because to Gabe's point, I think Britt does lose. I think this tournament can be an opportunity to build up other stars in the women's division. Britt can play up the angle like, oh, I didn't know who it was going to be. Like, to me, like Candice LeRae. I know that goes back to our point about being too inside, but if you get her out there, I don't think she had the non-compete because her contract just ended. And then you get her versus Toni Storm in the next round, and you just do things that way.
Yeah,
So do you want the Joker to be a name recognition, or do you want the Joker to lose? What do you want? Because I can give you a name that's going to blow your hair back.
Hit me.
You want Tessa Blanchard?
Ooh, boy. Say now,
controversial.
Yeah,
very controversial.
Right?
But that's a name that would certainly get everybody's attention.
yes.
That would prove my theory wrong. If Tessa Blanchard shows up, she ain't losing.
No.
And she's going over Britt Baker.
Right.
That's just the way that would have to be. I guess I just kind of see the different stories. Like, it makes sense of what they've been building towards, that Toni Storm would be next for Britt Baker. And then Ruby Soho, they've had some interactions there. So that's why I just kind of look at the bracket and go, oh, okay, here's what they're building towards. Because I think Britt Baker and a Ruby Soho match at the pay-per-view would be worthy of one of the 4 pay-per-views that AEW does every year. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to go for the shock value, that being said, so the list I have here are the past wild cards or jokers that AEW has done for either the Battle Royals, what have you. So we've seen Matt Sydal, the former Evan Bourne. We've seen Mercedes Martinez on the women's side.
Mm-hmm.
Leo Rush. The one tag team that they did was John Silver and Alex Reynolds from the Dark Order. Ruby Soho was the latest one for the women at All Out. And then Hangman Adam Page was the first one, and he won at the first Double or Nothing pay-per-view. So it's kind of a mixed bag of, like, okay, some name recognition, some, it's kind of a mixed bag of what they've done with this spot.
I wouldn't go with mixed bag, though. I'd say it's majority of not huge names. Like, that burst my bubble. Like, I'm thinking big. Like, I'm thinking these big names. When you list it like that, it's like, oh, like, these are, mid-carders. Like, no offense to those guys and girls, but, like, that's what it is.
Ruby was probably the biggest one. In terms of outside the company, Ruby was the biggest one.
So we're saying it's going to be ODB. Is that what we're saying?
Right.
I could see them doing something like Rebel.
Yes.
Britt Baker's been like, oh, hey, I've been absolutely screwed. I don't even know. And then it's Rebel, and Rebel just lays down, and Britt Baker gets the win.
Or that could be fun, like Rebel, that starts the breaking up of that group and that trio.
Sure.
And like Rebel doesn't just lay down and they put on a match and do it that way.
Yeah, if the Joker is supposed to lose, then you throw whoever you want to throw out there. But if you want to be like, have some shock and awe, you throw out like a Gail Kim, someone that can have a 5-star match. Like but I don't know what they want in that spot. There's plenty of free agent women that can give you a good match. I mean, better than what's in AEW now.
Yes.
Free agent women, right? Like some that haven't even been on major TV in 5 years, but I don't know what they want in that situation.
I could see, I wanted to go back briefly to your Mickie James point. I could see her going, I could see her doing it just to say that, hey, I've been on WWE, I've been on AEW, I've done this, like, and being on as many shows as she has been on, I can see that being a feather in her cap at this point in her career. So that certainly would be a possibility for me.
But why not take advantage of the opportunity to build someone? To like your point, Hood, like a Tegan Knox. Like she comes in, she's not a huge name.
Yeah.
She's a wrestling name. She put on a great match. She beats Britt her first night there. Like that's a big deal.
Right.
To me, the men's side is a little bit more interesting, just because I think there are some potential free agents. I think there are some in-house people that could be exciting. Like my first pick on the men's side, just because I think it would be a fun match, would be Miro. We haven't seen Miro in a long time. And if we get Miro versus Samoa Joe, like big meaty men slapping meat, yes, sign me up.
So why can't it be Bray Wyatt?
Money.
Oh, I understand. Oh, well, Tony's got it. Or at least his dad's got it.
Well, somebody in the Khan has it. Someone in the Khan family has it.
So, I mean, if we want to go for the start, but Miro sounds like, because we haven't seen him for a while, that I'm going to agree with you. That sounds obvious. And when Miro comes back, just like we saw him before, it feels fresh. Yeah. He was a joke when he first came in. He was miscast. I didn't get it. I know we were in the middle of pandemic, so it's almost some of that stuff's kind of hazy for me. It's like, you were out there, but you weren't really out there. Like, okay, I could forgive you, all right? But that Miro that we just saw recently, that guy's a monster. Oh. That guy could be on the top of the card. Believable. Yeah. And maybe he'll be that way again.
Yeah,
the God's favorite champ character was awesome. That was so much fun.
Yes.
I mean, the other one I'll throw out, I know the reports are that he's hard to find right now, is Cesaro. Like, Cesaro and Joe, give them 20 minutes. I'm good to go on Wednesday then.
Yeah, man.
If it's Cesaro, I think you can pencil in what my match of the week is going to be. Yeah. Like, we'll just put it that way if it ends up being Cesaro.
And the other one I'll throw out, just if they stay in-house, like it feels like they're building towards something. What about Jungle Boy? I know he had a shot to qualify, but like, you know, he seemed frustrated by the loss last night. Like, you throw him in and he goes on a run and see what that leads to.
Yeah, it's interesting what they're doing with their 4 pillars, right? So we just saw 2 of the pillars had opportunities to qualify and both failed to do so. Or, well, I shouldn't say failed to do so, but because Darby Allin did qualify, but then Darby Allin lost right away. Jungle Boy failed to qualify and is kind of on a singles losing streak, and they seem to be angling towards a Christian breakup with the Jurassic Express. I mean, I'm always for more Jungle Boy. I think he's fantastic in the ring, and there's still a lot more growth that needs to happen there. So I'd be all for that.
I've been seeing Jungle Boy really grow before our very eyes. Here's a guy here, Mark Henry. I could say it. I guess he won't mind me saying it. Mark Henry would tell me, God, a lot of connections, some things I'm not supposed to say. I'll say it anyway because it's GKW. I'll say it. There was times where Jungle Boy would hide during promos. Promo time. Anyone seen Jack Perry? Anyone seen Jungle Boy? And he would never. You couldn't find him, right? Because he was so deathly afraid of promos. He didn't mind the in-ring, obviously, because he's very talented, but he didn't want to do promos. And they've worked with him. And now when he speaks, I pay attention. It's a little George Bushy. Actually, you know, the way he speaks, it's a little talk, kind of speaks off the side of his face like this, you know, like it. But it's good, though. I like there's confidence when he speaks. And I believe him when he speaks. So I just like the maturation of him. I think he's been really, really growing before our very eyes.
And I think also, like, you know, I should let him win. Like, I think him losing adds to the storyline. Like, him getting frustrated and, you know, Christian being disappointed in him. And, like, him and Joe would put on a great match.
The turn's happening with Christian. We're just waiting for it. It's slow, but it's going to happen.
Yep.
It's a nice little slow burn.
Yeah, it is.
So are you guys saying inside the company or outside the company for the Joker on the men's side?
I'll say inside the company. I agree with you with Miro.
I think inside as well.
It's just because at some point, this roster, especially on the men's side, has to stop growing, right? Like it just can't keep expanding. It just, there's too much. They only have 3 hours every week.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to it. Just Samoa Joe is one of my favorites. I love watching him perform. And I think whoever they end up pairing him with, it should be a fun match next Wednesday night on Dynamite. Speaking of fun matches, let's go ahead and dive into it. The last thing we do on GKW, our favorite match of the week. Brian, what was your favorite match from the past 7 days?
So I'm going to go with Adam Cole and Dax. I thought that was really fun, but I'm going to cheat a little also because I think what I liked more than that wasn't really a match. The MJF stuff last night. Like the dark side of the ring promo, the way he's talking to the crowd, the way he's talking about 2024 and his buddy Cody. Like MJF is so damn good. To me, like that was the highlight of last night. And it was a good Dynamite, but like that whole interaction, every part of that, like MJF, bravo.
By the way, I love how AEW will lean into certain people. Like CM Punk's a babyface. But in Long Island, he ain't a babyface. He is a heel, right? So they lean into that. MJF is the heeliest of heels in all of pro wrestling right now. But in Long Island, dude is the biggest babyface, and they lean into it. It just makes it more fun.
It's the way it's supposed to be, right? I mean, you're on Long Island, you're in your hometown, people are supposed to love you, and it works, right? And by the way, he comes across as a babyface. He leans into the crowd like old school vintage Jericho did back in the day. Like he loves it, man. And I love that crowd in Long Island too. It's great. It's like they love wrestling. They've loved wrestling forever. But when AEW comes in, they have drawn very, very well. And because of those crowds, I think it's August, they're going to go to Arthur Ashe Stadium.
Yeah.
Because last time it was 20,000. It was sold out at Arthur Ashe. They're going to try it again apparently in August. So they're going to go back to New York again. So I'm just going to go with the first match that I saw on Dynamite as well. I was going to give it to something on Raw, but I just think that Cole and Harwood, I thought, had a great first round Owen Hart match. And you know what? Adam Cole kind of got away from just doing all the histrionics. He did that early, but he was really concentrating in the match with Dax. They're trying to accomplish something. And I love these matches because we're not seeing a lot of nonsense. We're seeing some really good wrestling. You knew Dax wasn't going to get over, but you knew he's going to give a great effort. You know what? He's believable as a single. He does remind me of Arn Anderson in a lot of ways. He could be like old school television champion from back in the day that goes territory to territory. And for a guy who's a tag team wrestler, his single stuff is really solid. And I think that he wrestled well against Adam Cole.
Yeah, and they told the story, the rib cage thing, and then the figure 4, they told that. Much like I think on Sunday, they, with the way Edge went after the shoulder of AJ Styles, I really appreciated that. But for me, like the most fun thing I think I saw this past week was the 6-man tag. Like that thing was action-packed. It was quick. It was quickly paced. It was so much fun. Roman doing the heel thing where he tags himself in, tags himself out, says, no, you don't get what you want. I go in when I want. And I didn't even see, like at first I thought they botched the ending because Roman comes in with the spear. I did not see the blind tag. Like I missed that the first time around. So like the attention to detail in that match, while I was like, okay, it was a house show main event, 6-man tag. Yeah. It was super fun. It was a lot of fun, and it delivered in terms of being an in-ring match. It was super fun. I think it accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, and in terms of just pure wrestling match, it was the most fun I had watching a match this past week.
Yeah, you got everything in that match except for Paul Heyman ripping his jacket off trying to get into the ring. The house show Paul Heyman trying to wrestle.
Yes.
I've seen that a couple times too. So it was a house show all the way up to that point. You didn't see Paul do that, but no, that was a fantastic 6-man. And again, we saw it on paper. All three of us are like, as much this card isn't much, but leave it to the men and women. Once it's in the ring, for the most part, it's always going to be solid. For the most part, and it was.
There's so much talent. You mentioned Paul Heyman. So quickly, what happens to Paul when Roman's gone?
He manages the Usos.
Okay.
But they're just a tag team then. They're not main eventing. They're not a marquee storyline. They're a tag team. We know how Vince thinks about tag teams. Yeah, are they big enough on their own?
Well, yeah, I would say so. But, I mean, you just can't just push Paul to the back. I mean, he's got stuff to say, right? I mean.
Yeah, he's one of the more entertaining people in WWE still.
I was going to make a smart-ass comment and say, well, Paul, with Roman gone, he just goes back to manage Joe Hennig. Just go back and remember that for a little bit, right? He called Kurt Hennig's kid for 2 months, whatever. Did he manage Cesaro? Or
he did. He did.
Okay.
Right after
he
Cesaro
won the Andre.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean,
Never worked
he should
out.
be managed. He should be managing other people, and they don't do that with him. That's unfortunate because he means so much. He's such the glue back there, not just for Roman. He speaks to a lot of wrestlers and helps them out. The announcers too. He's a glue guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Before we leave, I do want to mention because with New Japan Pro Wrestling, they've got their big match or their big show coming up later this summer with AEW, but they've got a pretty good card coming up. Capital Collision in DC on Saturday night. You have Eddie, and there's a lot of AEW crossover here. Eddie Kingston versus Ishii. You have Suzuki versus Brody King. Brody King, an AEW wrestler. You have Chaos featuring Okada and Trent Beretta, AEW guy, versus the Bullet Club. And then the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship is going to be a four-way match with Tanahashi, who's the current champ, Mox, Juice Robinson, and Will Ospreay. I think that's going to be a fun card. If you could check it out Saturday night, I would certainly recommend that, among with all the other wrestling that there is to consume.
Oh, you know what that means, Brian? We got to watch it.
All
That
right.
means if Gabe suggests it, then it's going to be on GKW next Thursday.
Are you telling me
All
you're
right.
not looking forward to Mox versus Juice versus Ospreay versus Tanahashi? Like, that's going to be a fun match.
As long as I can watch it and it won't be, bad video like I heard it was in Chicago. As long as I can watch it where the audio and the video matches up, I'll be there. I'll watch.
All right.
I
All
will
right,
say on the Fight app, if you order 17 shows a weekend, like I did Mania, you get credits for stuff. So maybe New Japan this weekend.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to wait and see.
He's getting like backwoods Arkansas stuff. They're all intergender wrestling, all of them.
Oh,
They're all
of course.
intergender matches.
Only intergender wrestling. That's all that Brian's going to pay for. Come on now.
Dude, did you see Athena against Swerve Scott? It was awesome. It was? No.
Yes.
Like in rural Iowa. Iowa Championship Wrestling. Hi everybody and welcome. Like what? Like it's the Fight app is bizarre. Like it's everywhere. It's wrestling everywhere.
Yes.
Every barn. Every basement, every attic where you can put a rig in, every backyard. It's like
They've got it all.
Watching. God.
Of course, plenty of other things to pay attention. We'll recap it all. We'll be back here next week with another episode of GKW.